Well, good morning. It is April the 14th, 2025, and straight from the Highly Caffeinated Studio, this is According to Willie B., and I, Will Bryce, am your host for the next half hour. So I have a really exciting show for y'all today, and I know I say that a lot, but today you're really going to enjoy because guess what? There's going to be some laughs that you're going to have, and of course they are at my expense. So I know that you will thoroughly enjoy today's episode. Before I dive off into that, let me make two quick announcements. I promise to be really quick. The first one, which is merch. We are getting closer and closer. So our equipment is ordered because, like I told you, we are going to do our t-shirts in-house so that we control the quality and make sure that we send out only quality t-shirts. I did not like the quality of the t-shirts that we went through a third party. So we're just going to do it ourselves. You know what they say, if you want a job done right, do it yourself. So that's what we're doing. All right, so if you guys just bear with us on that, should be a couple weeks, and we're going to have some really cool stuff. The other part of that is that my other announcement, real quick, is Culinary Highway. If you have not checked it out yet, I'm telling you, each episode is getting better and better and better, and we are booked for the next 3 months and still growing. So definitely go check that out on our YouTube channel at Culinary Highway. I promise you, you won't regret it. And there's some really cool episodes that have already aired and some coming up that are just going to be mind-blowing. But other than that, that's all the announcements I have for today. Let's just jump right into this week's trip. Now, so like I told you, there's going to be some laughter at my expense, and I'm okay with that. You guys know that. Understand one thing. I have had people recently ask me, it was because of a previous episode where I said something about ghost or ghost tours or something. And so it sparked this communication through email. Did I believe in ghosts? And I have to say, honestly, I really don't, per se. I throw that caveat in there, per se. But I can tell you, I don't know that I could fly, but I'm not going to jump off a cliff just to go test the theory. Same thing with ghosts or anything that's haunted. I'm not. You've watched, if you've watched enough horror films or scary movies, you know what, once it gets dark, you don't go in the attic, you don't go in the basement, you don't look under the bed, and you don't go in the closet. So, there are rules, and I follow those rules just to be on the safe side. I'm not going to test the theory. The reason I tell you all this is because this trip was to Jefferson, Texas, and supposedly they tout themselves as one of the most haunted towns in Texas. Yeah. So I would almost agree with them for the amount of stuff that happened while we were there. I don't necessarily believe in ghosts, but I'm not going to really push the envelope, so to speak. Okay? So there's that. So I'll tell you that we traveled and traveled and drove, and so it was late when we arrived in Jefferson, Texas. And instead of doing an Airbnb, we did something a little different, and we did a bed and breakfast. Now, I thought to myself, this would be really cool for myself and the spouse to, go to a bed and breakfast, small romantic inn. Yeah. No. If you're going to do that, don't do it in the most haunted town in the state. Because what I got was a home that was obviously built in, I don't know, the late 1800s or early 1900s. It had a basement, it had an attic, it had closets, it had all of the typical horror story hiding places. Now, I'm going to tell you that my wife has told this story a few times, and every time she tells it, well, let me just go into it here. So we arrived. It was late at night. It was about 11:30 p.m. And yes, I realize I just jerked the rug out from under you, but just stay tuned. You stay with me. When we drove up, I was like, okay, this is a pretty cool old home. It should have the romantic charm that they advertised. Wrong. So when we entered the home, there is a long hallway, and it is lined on both sides with pictures of people that look like from the 1800s. That automatically gave it a creepy vibe to me. It's just me. What also added to that element was these cast iron pendant light fixtures, and there was probably a half a dozen or so down the hallway. I could just see them flickering at any moment, but they didn't. But nevertheless, walking to the end of that hallway to our bedroom was a little unnerving, I will say. We get to our room, open the door, we take our stuff in, we get ready for bed. As I go to turn out the light, because it's an old house, so the light switch is by the door. There's no bedside lamps. All I can tell you that happened from that moment was, or all that I remember, was that I turned off the light, and I knew at that moment that I was unsafe. So I launched myself. I didn't jump. I launched myself from the bedroom door at the light switch to the bed, basically giving my wife what would be the equivalent of, you've seen people on a cruise ship do a belly flop. It's pretty much gives you the picture that you need. She wasn't upset about it, but she was a little unrestful, if you will, and demanded to know why I chose to jump into the bed like that. And when she realized that I jumped from the light switch at the door all the way to the bed, she said, "But I will say that's quite impressive that you jumped that far. But why did you do it?" I said, well, looking at the bed, there is a pretty, I would say, a decent-sized gap that anything under that bed could come out quickly. So I don't know if there's anything under the bed or not. I'm not taking that chance. So you call me a chicken, say I got a yellow stripe down my back all you want, but I'm not taking that chance. So yes, when the light went out, when all the light was dispersed from the room, I launched myself from the doorway to the bed in one swift, quick motion. Probably couldn't do it again to save my life, but I kind of felt like I was saving my life by doing that. The next day didn't get much better, but like I said, every time she tells a story, the distance that I jumped from the light switch to the bed becomes longer and longer, almost like a fish story, if you will. But it was, even in the original distance, it was pretty impressive because I'm sorry. It's just, I don't know what's under the bed. I don't want to stand on the floor to find out. I'm one of those people that if I'm lying in bed at night scrolling on my phone, checking social media, I drop my phone and hits the floor, I'm not reaching down there to pick that up. No. Until I turn on the bedside lamp, which they did not have. So there's that. That's my caveat of safety. And they had the double-doored closet with the louvered blinds. You've seen them in horror movies. You're hiding in the closet and you're looking out the louvers and you see the guy with the butcher knife coming through. I don't know, but it creeped me out to no end. And just coming down the hall creeped me out. So I was done. I was ready to go to sleep. Well, I would have thought those little ghost ventures were over. I was wrong. The next day, we shopped around town. There's a lot of, in Jefferson, Texas, because it's an old town, there's a lot of antique shops and stores, and you have your, like your, there's a Jefferson General Store, things like that. So a lot of small town charm boutiques and stores and stuff. There's a peanut nutty nutty's peanut nutty's. I'm going to get this right. I'm not going to open up the butcher shop on words. Nutty's peanut butter candy store. That is really cool. I enjoyed that store. Also, the Jefferson General Store, I really enjoyed as well because it was a really old school, like general store, but they also served breakfast and lunch and pastries, and they had a really good cup of coffee. That's why I'm leading into that one, because you know that yours truly has to have that coffee, and they had a really good cup of coffee. I think I had coffee there 3 times, maybe 4, in the weekend that we were there. So I definitely recommend them if you're a coffee drinker, because it was really good. There were things like old meal antiques, the things, little consign. I'm trying. I guess what I'm trying to say is like consignment type antique stores. So really cool. And so it was really enjoyable. We were able to spend the entire day. But here's where things took a wrong turn, if you will. We're walking through town and we come across a sign on the sidewalk that says, "Oh, Jefferson Ghost Walk Tour." Well, now, I've been on a ghost tour before, and it really wasn't that big a deal. So, my wife, she likes them. So I said, sure, we could do that. That's not a problem. I didn't know what I was signing up for, because this particular ghost walk was led by, I believe her last name is Breckenridge, and she has been on different A&E programs and stuff about paranormal, etc. And so we actually had the privilege of having her lead our ghost walk that evening. How lucky for me. Insert sarcasm. But she did a really phenomenal job. She was really good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away from her. She knows her stuff. She did a great job. Especially scaring the living daylights out of me. So she actually, or that ghost walk, particular ghost walk, has access to actually enter into businesses in town at night. This is the first time I've ever been on a ghost walk that was able to go into private businesses at nighttime. And for the most part, it didn't seem scary. It felt like I was a burglar. It felt like I was not supposed to be there. But it was not going to end that way. The last stop on that ghost walk was in I believe it was a bar. Maybe they serve food. I'm not 100% sure, because you're going to find out that I exited rather quickly. As we entered into the building, we were all shuffled into a really small area, and hanging above our heads were these ventriloquist puppets. And there was a lot of them, probably at least 50. And they're hanging by these little strings, and most of them were really old. They were really cool. They were carved, most of them carved out of wood, etc. Really, really neat. And during the daytime, that would have probably been a neat place to have a cocktail after work or Saturday afternoon. But at nighttime, being in there where you're not supposed to be in there and seeing these ventriloquist puppets hanging from the ceiling, I was a lot unnerved. And what happened next could not have went any more perfect for everyone around me, not for me. I am staring down the two that are above me. I don't know why. And it's almost like I was daring that puppet to move. Like, do not move, do not move, do not move. Well, you know what happened. It moved. And it didn't just move, it moved. When I'm saying it moved a lot. I didn't wait for an explanation. I did not. I exited the building rather quickly. After our tour guide came outside and caught up with me, she explained that the air conditioner had cut on, and that's what caused the puppet to sway. Sure, let's go with that. No, I'm not buying that. I stared that puppet down, I dared it to move, and it moved way more than I had cared for it to move. And it scared the living, yeah, out of me. And I was not happy about it. I left that building quicker than a greased duck under the fence. I'm going to tell you. It's just, I know that it's a puppet. I know it's hanging on a string. But it was almost like that puppet and I had this little mental conversation. And I'm saying, do not move. And it defied me and moved anyway. And no, I wasn't having the whole air conditioner story. It moved, and that's all I needed to know. Because it was almost like it looked back at me and said, ha, you want some more? But it was too late. Had left the conversation because I left the building. I kid you not. The only reason that there's not a hole in the wall is because the door was unlocked and I was able to escape. Y'all can laugh at me all you want to. The scary portraits down the hall, the turning the light out and having to jump into bed for my safety, the puppet moving on a ghost walk tour. No, no, no. Too much coincidence. And I'm going to give you another little incident that happened the following day. So this is what I'm saying. This whole haunted town had my name, and it was not letting go. We went on a riverboat tour. Plain simple enough. Little story of history going down the river. What's the big harm in that? It's called the Turning Basin Riverboat Tour. And yeah, the boat died, and the captain could not get it started back. It stayed dead long enough that it was concerning, but we finally got it going and were able to get back to the starting point. I'm not saying that I would never not visit Jefferson again, but I will tell you that I haven't been back yet, and it may be a while before I do go back. And I can promise you Holiday Inn will be where I stay, and there will be no ghost walk tour. That whole bed and breakfast just had a really creep factor, and I'm not going to mention their name because it's an independent business. But wow, next morning the breakfast that they served, you would think you get to pick what you want for breakfast. No, they cook what they want, how they want it to be cooked, and then they serve it to you and here's your breakfast. Yeah, no, I'll find me a Dunkin' Donuts. I'm good. But like I said, there were a lot of really cool restaurants. There were a lot of cool shops, and stuff, especially antiques. A lot of antique stores. Between the antique stores and the Jefferson General Store, man, I'm telling you, it was so cool. I really enjoyed that. But I can tell you that on the Ghost Walk tour, we went through the Excelsior Hotel, which was kind of portrayed as Steven Spielberg's, I guess, his wheelhouse to come up with different horror movies. I could see that. The historic Jefferson Hotel, which is the oldest building in town. There's also the Kahn Hotel, Kahn. It had a history of a bloody trail of an unsolved murder. Then, of course, Caddo Lake has its own mystery with the paddle boat that burned years ago, and then now, of course, they think those spirits are roaming around Jefferson, Texas. Now, whether they are or not, I don't know. But I'm not going to go searching around trying to find out. I can tell you that. Some of the coolest antique stores there, one of them is the Old Mill Antique Store. One of my absolute favorites. So make sure you check that if you go. There's also, besides the Nutty's Peanut Butter Candy Store, there's also the Jefferson Fudge Company. They had some really good fudge, so don't forget to check that out. And, of course, I have to mention the food. So while we were there for the weekend, there's a place called Auntie Skinner's Burgers Riverboat Club. Really good burger. I really enjoyed it. Really kind of unique vibe, especially for an old town. I kind of thought maybe it was not quite not out of place, but it was it made its own mark, so to speak. It made its own mark on the town, and I thought it was really cool. There is, if you like white tablecloth, there is the Serenity Ranch. And it is steaks and white tablecloth, and food is absolutely phenomenal. I kid you not, it's white tablecloth, but I promise you, you will not be disappointed in that. For lunch one day, we had the Riverport River. I'm not going to butcher this word more than 4 times in a row. Riverport barbecue, really good. Texas. Excuse me, Texas style barbecue, but it was really good. There's also the Port of Jefferson Outpost. This place was really cool, like a general store almost, but the amount of pies and pastries and breakfast and the pancakes. Oh wow! And they had a really good cup of coffee. I think I had a couple of cups of coffee from there as well. But just a really cool town. We absolutely enjoyed the entire weekend there. Even with all the paranormal stuff, if you want to call it that. And like I said, it's not that. If you ask me straight out, if you look me straight in the eye and say, "Do you believe in the paranormal and the ghost and all this stuff?" Not really. No. I have to say no. However, I'm not going to test the theory. I'm not going to check the closet. If once it gets dark, if you need something from the attic or the basement, you're welcome to go get it, and I will report you missing to the authorities. But hey, it's just not my thing. I'm just not going to test that out. It just creeps me out. And you're going to say, well, you're not creeped out, you're scared. You know what? Choose whatever word you like. You want to choose scared or creeped out? I mean, I guess maybe me being creeped out doesn't sound as bad as being scared or like I'm a chicken or whatever. But hey, you know what? It is what it is. It's if you want to know the honest truth about it, what it really is, it's humor. If you want to get a good laugh, let me get scared of something and watch me disappear out of a building. Worst case scenario, if you don't believe either, at least you'll get a good laugh. I always tell people, if I'm running, that means there's something chasing me. You should run too. So, but anyway, that brings us to the end of our show. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. I hope I didn't scare you the way I got scared. I'm sure that I did not. But nevertheless, it's all in good fun. I look forward to talking to you guys next week. Between now and then, don't forget to caffeinate and conquer. And please go over there and check out Culinary Highway on our YouTube channel. It's absolutely taken off with leaps and bounds. There is one final piece I'm going to give you before I let you go. And I wish I had mentioned this in the beginning, but I will mention it again next week. I got an email today from Apple that we hit number 93 spot in our category for podcasts for the last 30 days. Ladies and gentlemen, that is absolutely phenomenal, and I could not have done it without the faithful listeners that I have. I am truly humbled. I thank each and every one of you, and I look forward to telling you another story next week about some wild travel that I've went on. But until that time, caffeinate and conquer, and I'll see you next week. Y'all have a great day, and see you soon. Bye-bye.